Hi, Reverend Paula Zabkar here with Spiritual Soul Center. Welcome. Welcome to where we are here. What our intention is that we are here to build love and kindness in ourselves, to create that in ourselves. We are here to create a movement grounded in that, grounded in love and kindness that transforms us, our community, and the world. That work has been going on since the inception of Spiritual Soul Center. It's gone on before the pandemic and through the pandemic. And as we emerge from the pandemic, it will continue on because it is a commitment that we make as a group, as a community, and also a commitment we make individually. I am here to create a movement in myself, grounded in love and kindness that transforms me, that transforms my community, and transforms the world. I hope you are feeling that and knowing that and practicing that right here, right now, in the midst of it all. Welcome to Spiritual Soul Center. Well, speaking of being in the midst of it all, we are in the midst of the Advent season. Advent is, in the traditional Christian calendar, the weeks before Christmas is the time of preparation. And I'm quite sure you've been doing some preparation of your own in the outer world for sure. And Advent is also a time for spiritual preparation. It's a time for preparing for that experience of Christmas morning to be just amazing, to be able to actually feel different because you have been using these practices throughout the preparation time. So it takes a commitment, it takes some time and attention and saying, yeah, I want to evolve spiritually during this time. I want to wake up with that joy on Christmas morning, not because I got some gifts, but because I am different. I am different. On week 1, I talked about the practice of self-acceptance and surrendering into the moment. It's like that Moses moment of, here I am, Lord. Like I bring myself totally and completely right into that moment. And the simple question is, what now? What is my next step? To self-acceptance, to accept myself exactly as I am, and to simply say, what next? Where do I go from here? And surrendering to that moment. Last week, I talked about the practice of forgiveness and how I thought that the practice of forgiveness is similar to the practice of love as it's given to us in scriptures. It says, love others as you love yourself. Like that happens first. And I think that happens first also with forgiveness. And I gave you the quote from Maya Angelou that really describes what I think is forgiveness. And she says it this way: I did then what I knew how to do. And now that I know better, I do better. You see how there's no judgment in that? There's simply an acknowledgement, and there's going on and making a change as I move forward. That is really self-forgiveness, of releasing whatever it is that I was holding on in myself. And it's only then that we can deal with the injustices and the hurt and the pain that others have caused us. When we learn how to release that, when we learn how to soften toward our own self, we allow ourselves to soften toward others. In this book that I'm reading, Love Without End, Jesus Speaks, Jesus says this about forgiveness. He says, forgiveness is an act of perfecting the love that you are. Forgiveness is the act of perfecting the love that you are. And he mentions in there, boy, if we just knew that is the definition of forgiveness, maybe we wouldn't have such a hard time with it, right? I think so, an act of perfecting the love that I am. So this week, what's next? What's this next practice that I'm going to talk about? Well, this practice has to do with balancing in these times that we are in. It has to do with balancing. Doesn't that sound good? Balance always sounds good, but what does it mean for real? I mean, what does it mean when we say balance? Well, my definition of that is balance is making choices that allow me to be in a state of satisfaction of how I bring myself to life. They allow me to be at ease and grounded and centered, whatever is happening in my work life, in my social life, in my personal life, in my spiritual life. It's that helps me to stay out of getting swept up, getting swept up in things or getting swept along in things. One of my coaching coaching clients calls it getting spun up. Have you ever been spun up about something? Who wants to live like that? Who wants to live spun up? When a child gets spun up, when they get all out of sorts, the parents often use the strategy of timeout. Not as a punishment, when it's not used as a punishment, but is used instead as allowing a space for a child to calm down until they can get in touch with their rational mind. They calm down so they're out of the emotion of it all. And further, that timeout can also be, when it's a positive timeout, when it's constructive timeout, it can be used for that child to develop positive beliefs about themselves, about the world, and their behavior. So, the practice this week is timeout. There it is. It's adult timeout that has the same kind of intention to put me in a space to calm down, to get myself out of emotion, to get me to thinking about, the positive beliefs about myself, about the world, about my behaviors. That's what it's about. Timeout. Adult timeout. And adult timeout is simply the practice of stillness. It's the practice of stillness. You know it, and we know it as many things. We know it as prayer, meditation, yoga, chanting, following the breath work, all those things. Time out, which is the practice of stillness. The practice of stillness. Jesus tells us about the practice of stillness when he says, when you pray, go into your room and close the door. Go into your room and close the door. This practice of stillness requires that we separate ourselves from the busyness of life, to separate ourselves from the doingness of life, and to close the door to that. Close the door to that. Abraham says this quote that I think is very applicable here. They say, every problem in your life will dissolve by your absence of attention to it. Every problem in your life will dissolve by your absence of attention to it. In other words, to get to that place, I would say every distraction in your life, every distraction in my life will dissolve if I stop paying attention to it. And one of those ways is to go into the stillness, to let it dissolve, to take my attention away from that, and to be still in the rhythm of prayer, in the rhythm of breath, in the rhythm of chant, in the spaces between it all. That's where we find stillness, and out of stillness, peace. That's the gift of stillness, is peace. And it's not just peace. It's not just peace. In the stillness, that is where we allow the space for the filling in and the feeling of the presence of God. Oh, yeah. When you practice with that intention to come into contact with the divine, to allow space for God to fill in. Wow. That's where we find strength that we didn't know we had. Hope, inspiration, an idea, guidance. In that stillness, there is peace and possibility, and there is the presence of the divine. Doesn't that just sound amazing? If I walked around knowing that and practicing the stillness so that I came in touch with exactly that. See, stillness starts with a shift in attention from the outer to the inner, and it moves toward that experience of the divine, a true experience of the divine. I want to read you a story from a book called Journey with the Master. It was given to me by a dear friend, Champion King, a long time ago. It sat on my shelf for quite some time. And as sometimes happens with me, I picked it up at a time when I'm quite sure it was most meaningful in my life. This is the epilogue story in this book, and I want to share it with you now. The man was told that on the mountaintop he would find God, and that there he would meet him face to face. So the man arose early before the light of day and started on his journey. When the first rays of sun came through the forest trees, it gave him joy, and he climbed steadily for many hours. As he climbed, he became thirsty, and he sought a brook where he could quench his thirst, and while resting beside it, he fell asleep. As he slept, God came down from the mountaintop, and his form was that of a young man, strong of stature, with eyes of piercing beauty. God spoke. His voice rang out as clear as a sweet bell. These are the words he spoke. You started the journey of the soul, away from the crowded streets and cities with their glamour and deceit, away from the rush of life as it is lived by man in his ignorance. You came alone to the mountain trail as day dawned in your consciousness of what life really means. You entered on the way of the lonely ones, thinking if you kept to the path, up and over the crags of old beliefs and old desires, that at last you would find me, God. But I wait not there in my high place of glory, while you make the weary journey alone. I saw the desire burning in your heart, as even now the sun burns your flesh, and I hastened down to meet you, that together we might make the journey back, from sense to soul. The way, after all, will not be a lonely one, for on every step of the way you shall have celestial companionship. Awake, rise up, let us be on our way with joy. Well, the man awakened and found that he had slept through the hours of the day, and the soft evening dew were upon his cheeks. The sky was jeweled with stars. There was great stillness, and behold, he was even then upon the mountaintop. He knew that God was there, and within his heart was a great silence. And there, within his own heart, dwelt God. He sang with joy, for he had found a great secret, that where there is stillness within, there can God be always found. So he spent the night on the mountaintop in quiet meditation, and with the day's dawning he went down the trail to the busy city. But God went with him, and the man walked and talked with God as they walked the busy streets. He was filled with peace, for he had found that the mountaintop was his own soul's awakening at last to the reality of its true being, and never again would he have to search for God. This fills my heart with so much hope and so much peace and joy to know that I don't have to look for God. I simply have to become still to realize, to have the awareness that the divine dwells within this very thing, within this body, within this essence, within this spirit that I am. There is no searching, there is no having to struggle to the mountaintop, for God is always with me, always, cannot be separated from me. You know, that is the promise of stillness. Not only peace, but to know that, to live that, to know that that's where the soothing comes from, that's where the strength comes from, that's where the hope resides. That God within we talk about, and you may say the God within is real and powerful. And it's through the practice of stillness and coming into that peace that we create the space for our own awareness to be tuned in to exactly what is already there. I know that I will wake up on Christmas morning different, having practiced stillness, having experienced peace, and have experienced God itself in me, as me, the divine. So today, on the third week of Advent, we light the candle for peace, because peace is the experience awaiting us through the practice of stillness. And the peace that passes understanding, that is that God itself, the divine, dwells in us, always, at this very moment, and always, always. Let's take that into meditation today. from this place of peace, from this stillness within my very being. From there is where I know God. And not just know God, but experience God in all its glory, the divine, living me, breathing me, sustaining me, carrying me when I cannot carry myself. For that amazingness, amazing awareness in this moment, we are grateful, and so it is. Amen. Well, thank you for spending some time with me today. I am looking forward to next Sunday because all of this culminates, and I can feel it already, culminates in joy, culminates in that feeling of just utter aliveness. And so I look forward to sharing that message with you next week as well. Let's close together, feeling that peace, feeling that serenity, feeling that just amazingness in this moment now, and pray this way. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be happy. And so it is until next time. Amen.